There are moments in history when resistance is not carried in the hands of soldiers, but worn on the face of ordinary women. Imagine a world burning with war, where entire nations collapse under tyranny, and yet one color, the brilliant, dangerous red of lipstick, emerges as a weapon. Adolf Hitler despised this color, and his hatred reveals something vital. The deepest fear of any tyrant is not an army at the gates, but the free expression of individuals who refuse to be controlled. Hitler's vision of women was simple and cruel. Their lives were to be reduced to 3 words: Kinder, Küche, Kirche. Children, kitchen, church. In the Reich's propaganda, the perfect German woman was healthy, fertile, and obedient. She wore no makeup. Her cheeks were flushed naturally, her lips unpainted, her face a mirror of racial purity. Anything beyond this was seen as deceit, corruption, even danger. The Nazi Women's League circulated pamphlets denouncing cosmetics. Red lipstick, in particular, was singled out as vulgar, foreign, and immoral. Joseph Goebbels' Ministry of Propaganda filled women's magazines with articles ridiculing lipstick wearers as shallow or corrupt. The nightlife of Weimar Germany, with its jazz clubs, painted lips, and sexual freedom, was condemned as a memory of decadence. Hitler demanded that it all be erased. And this vision seeped into everyday life. Young women in Berlin who wore lipstick risked scorn from strangers and suspicion from police. Some were accused of being prostitutes or labeled as asocial. Lipstick was never formally outlawed, but socially and politically it was marked as rebellion. For women in Nazi Germany, the simple act of coloring their lips was a small but dangerous act of resistance. On the other side of the war, the story was completely different. In Britain and America, lipstick became a weapon of morale. As men left for the front lines, women took their places in factories, hospitals, and offices. Governments understood that morale was as crucial as ammunition, and they turned to psychology and cosmetics to keep spirits alive. In 1941, Elizabeth Arden released a new lipstick shade called Victory Red. It wasn't just sold in shops, it was issued directly to members of the Women's Army Corps, along with regulation uniforms and boots. Helena Rubinstein followed suit, advertising lipstick as essential to the war effort. American propaganda posters showed women in red lipstick flexing their muscles, hammering steel or typing at desks, with slogans like, "Beauty is duty." For the first time, makeup was not seen as vanity, but as service. Lipstick became patriotic. A red mouth in a grey world reminded soldiers of home, reminded women of resilience, and reminded nations of life that could not be extinguished. One US Army nurse later recalled, "I wore lipstick even when we had nothing else. It was my shield. It said to the men we treated, 'You are still in a world worth living for.'" In Britain, Winston Churchill himself intervened to make sure lipstick was never rationed. When supplies dwindled, cigarettes, stockings, even butter disappeared from the shelves, but not lipstick. Churchill reportedly declared that it boosted morale more than almost anything else. In bombed-out cities, women queued for hours to buy a single tube. They would step out of shelters after air raids, covered in dust and ash, and reapply lipstick before walking into the daylight. It was an act of dignity in a world that tried to take dignity away. The contrast could not have been sharper. In Berlin, painted lips could bring shame or punishment. In London or New York, they were celebrated, photographed, and immortalized as symbols of courage. Hitler saw red lipstick as dangerous
because it suggested independence and sexuality, qualities he could not bend to his will. Churchill and Roosevelt, by contrast, saw it as a subtle but powerful weapon, a reminder that freedom was not only military, but cultural. Philosophically, this tells us something profound about power. Dictators always fear symbols, because symbols are untouchable. They can be banned, mocked, or censored, but they survive because they live in people's minds. Red lipstick was dangerous not because of pigment, but because of what it represented, a refusal to disappear. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote about the will to power, the drive within every individual to assert their existence. Red lipstick became a visible expression of this will. And Michel Foucault's words ring true here. Where there is power, there is resistance. The Nazi regime tried to discipline bodies, erase individuality, and dictate appearances. Yet in the smallest gestures, women slipping on red lipstick before a factory shift, resistance bloomed. The war ended, but the legacy of this forbidden color did not. In the post-war years, Hollywood immortalized red lips through icons like Marilyn Monroe and Rita Hayworth. Glamour returned, but behind the glamour was memory. The memory of nurses in field hospitals, factory workers with soot on their faces, but crimson on their mouths. Women who proved that beauty and defiance could exist even in ruins. And the lesson survives. Today, when someone tells you not to wear something, not to speak too loudly, not to take up too much space, remember, it is rarely about aesthetics. It is about control. Hitler did not fear lipstick because of how it looked. He feared it because it meant women were still choosing for themselves. So, when you see that flash of red, remember, it is not mere fashion. It is resistance painted on the body. It is dignity that survives bombs, oppression, and dictators. It is the forbidden color that tyrants feared and the color that free people claimed as their own.